guy who put a rap video together about how easy it was to get money from EDD, right?
It was like, oh my God, this is pathetic.
But the dumb ones that are going to do that stuff and brag about
that the future is not just something to experience, it's something to manifest.
The governor's office and the California Department of Public Health now advising
the U.S. preparing for a possible coronavirus outbreak. Northern California on heightened alert today.
This is a moment we need to make tough decisions. There's a recognition of our interdependence that requires of this moment that we direct a statewide order for people to stay at home. That directive goes into force and effect this evening.
Oh, it's so heartbreaking. These stories that my staff are telling me, the people that are completely reliant, they have nothing, and they were laid off through no fault of their own, completely because of government direction that this is the way it's got to be for our own good, right? And so they relied on some subsidy, some way to...
As EDD estimates their total fraud to be up to $30 billion.
Created the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program to help people who wouldn't typically qualify for unemployment checks, like people who are self-employed or independent contractors.
The government, not just in California, but elsewhere, decided we better just get these people help. Because as you recall, the economy nosedived like it hasn't been in our lifetime.
But fast leaves room for error.
A lot of scammers realize, hey, this is an easy way to make money. And in fact, California looks like it's lost an estimated $20 billion through fraud. Now, that's not state money, it's federal money. But nonetheless, the program was managed by EDD.
So now the EDD, at the demand of the feds, is backtracking, asking those that received money from the PUA to submit proof. 5 months. That's how long Terry Sweet and her husband were forced to keep the doors of Sweet Oaks closed.
That pays our mortgage, and my husband and I are both in our 70s, so we're not really in a position to go out and work the way we used to.
But still, she found the bright side. The state, using federal money, was allowing people who were self-employed, like herself, to apply for unemployment checks.
Really grateful that they made the state made the exception.
But an estimated $20 billion in fraudulent claims later, and the EDD is now going back to ask for proof from more than 1 million people.
EDD has been victimized to the tune of billions of dollars. And so it's even a heightened alert when someone calls and says they're from the government and they want some information from you.
Sweet thought it was a scam call, so she asked for a name and a number to call back.
I asked her, how do I know you're from EDD? May I have your number and I'll call you back? So when I called back, I got a message that said, we are getting more calls than we can handle. Please try again later.
She never got through. Then she gets an email saying her claim was denied. She now needs to appeal it and set a court date.
So much work could have been avoided. And why take up court time, the judge's time, when all they had to do was answer the phone?
Pandemic relief recipients are facing tough collection tactics as the EDD tries to get back some money it paid out in pandemic relief. KTV's Tom Vakar live in the newsroom tonight with the story. Tom?
Well, no matter how well-intentioned, this was a government snafu from the very beginning, and most of the folks that got deliberately defrauded by the government are likely to be nowhere to be found, the people that actually did the crimes.
Months after they received their checks, the EDD wants 1.4 million unemployed recipients, mostly for federal pandemic relief, to provide proof that they are eligible and entitled to the money they receive. Many recipients, freelancers or small business owners who got pandemic relief, say they don't have specific documents that can definitively prove that they were seeking work or working, documents that were not required when the relief was granted in the Trump administration.
This was a very poorly designed program. And it had very lax standards, very lax protocols. People want to attack EDD, but these decisions in state government and federal government were made elsewhere. It's not EDD that was responsible for how this money went out.
If they can't prove it, the EDD wants the money back. In some cases, as much as $30,000, either voluntarily or forced collection through garnishment, property liens, reducing other benefits, or court actions. The state has been stung and severely criticized for writing $20 billion in checks to fraudsters, but blames federal government requirements for the clawback policy.
Document just indeed validating what you've told us. You were working or were self-employed or had planned to be, and now provide that to us. And if we don't get something from you, you could eventually face the fact of repaying benefits that you'd received.
EDD spokeswoman Lori Levy said 1 in 5 responded. That means at least 1.1 million did not.
Anybody who doesn't respond in phase 1 will get another opportunity. We're going to remind them again with notices and paper notices.
So if the rest don't respond, well, Lightman says if these people just ignore the request, the estimated $20 billion in fraud will likely become part of the federal
started
deficit.
with the envelopes. Dozens. Hundreds. In one case, more than 1,000 showing up in California mailboxes. They're all real names, and likely all of them are victims of identity theft.
Single-family residents who would have a dozen show up in their mailbox to different names at that
pieces of mail, all to the same address with different people's names on it. I don't know how that gets past somebody.
We tried to reach out to EDD, didn't get a response. Or we heard that EDD was telling folks to just get rid of the letters or to mail them back to EDD, just answers that didn't make any sense to us.
Receive their state benefits through debit cards like these, but they lack chips, a common security barrier against fraud. Still, 45 states plus DC use debit cards, mostly without chips, although many also give recipients a direct deposit option. Our investigation found that states like California and Nevada saw an outsized share of stolen benefits during the pandemic because they had a greater reliance on chipless debit cards.
A card without a chip, that's really easy to copy.
Criminals can then take the duplicate card to an ATM for cash, according to cybersecurity experts such as IBM's Charles Henderson.
It's just a matter of picking up a reader-writer for the mag stripe and duplicating it, just like a photocopy.
And I would presume that it would be impossible to replicate a card with an actual chip on it.
It is extremely expensive and cost prohibitive for criminals to manufacture a card with
up
a
the
chip in
EDD
it.
cards at a selected address, often a vacant home, cash them at an ATM, then send the money back to the crime rings through Cash App or Green Dot.
The first time early on, listening to a jail conversation that was recorded where an inmate is telling his girlfriend how to fill it out, and she expresses reservations and saying, you know, we're going to get caught. This is so easy. There's no way this could be right. And he said, you don't understand. Everyone in here is getting paid. We need to get ours. It's staggering. When you're talking about thousands of convicted felons that are engaged in this behavior.
You were holding a press conference just to sort of get attention to it because nobody was paying attention.
Amory Schubert, myself, a number of other DAs, we did a press conference for the exact reason you said. No one was paying attention to it.
The EDD fraud task force found inmates within every prison and jail in the state collected unemployment.
It is perhaps and will be one of the biggest fraud of taxpayer dollars in California. The amount of fraud history. that we found was astronomical.
First it was, as I said, state prison inmates, then it was jail inmates, and increasingly over time we're learning here in El Dorado County, literally half of the inmates in the jail were collecting unemployment benefits. And that was much the case throughout the jails and the prisons throughout the state of California.
I was interested in knowing who was ripping off the system or who was making claims, I should say, because not all the inmates, it's not them. It's somebody stealing their name or somebody on the outside using their name. But I was shocked at how, you know, it was Minnie Mouse making a claim or Poopy Britches making a claim.
These cases include the names of notorious convicted murderers, including Scott Peterson, Wesley Shermantine from the Speed Freak Killers, and serial killer Kerry Stayner.
And I'm like,
or
okay,
setting
this
up
is
on
ridiculous.
surveillance on that ATM. They saw a suspect arrive in a vehicle. He walks over to the ATM. He's acting suspiciously, and they would see him pull out a card, put it in the ATM, and then he would take the cash. Another card, cash, another card, cash. He did this 5 times and then decided to leave, and so they had patrol units in the area make a traffic stop on that subject, and they seized $5,000 in cash along with 5 different EDD cards. They identified one suspect who was basically acting as a middleman for a lot of people.
Walk you through picture by picture or step by step, just detailing, okay, this is the best method that you can do for filing a claim with this specific state.
Saying, hey, I know how the system works. I can get you set up on EDD and get you benefits, but I'm going to charge you a
theft device ready. As soon as he puts the camera card in there, it starts rolling. As it starts to play, we'll see him, listen to him inputting his PIN number, and then within a few moments it's up and running.
Okay, so basically what the crooks do is they're going to place this generally on the right-hand side. You can see it's got magnets and sticky stuff. It's both sticky and magnetic, okay? And they actually will put this on the side of the machine.
So that's him entering the buttons.
Then they take this device, which is basically the card reader, and they insert this into the card reader itself. And as you can see right here, in here, it's actually going to capture the magnetic strip data.
And it's that quick? It's that quick. So 10 seconds later, another car pulls up, not even noticing anything.
With a normal bank card, if you were to go to your bank, like I'm with a credit union, I could pull about $300, $400 out at a time. These EDD cards, you could pull out $1,000 at a time.
So many of these calls coming through with EDD cases and people having their cards being completely wiped out and drained, and we had no idea
These
how it
are
was happening.
the letters right here that we received in about 1 month. This is my district alone.
I was getting stonewalled, and I wanted to show them how severe this problem is. In my district alone, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these letters that are accumulating tens of thousands of dollars that are going fraudulently. And we have this frustration of this segment of our population that can't get in.
I don't have access. I say read. You don't have to be rude about it.
I'm not being rude.
I know how to read,
I'm not being
rude. I didn't say anything. I said this is what it says.
They wouldn't even let me go in to access the people. The security people wouldn't even let me in. I'm an elected official, not that I should be treated differently, but I represent 500,000 people, so let me help you, right? Communicate. And
new numbers by the Employment Development Department show there is a growing backlog of cases despite less new filings being made. Right now, over 1 million Californians have filed claims that have yet to be paid or resolved. This overall total breaks down into 2 different numbers. Those who still need to certify further information, that makes up a majority of the cases, and those who have been waiting for at least 3 weeks. In that latter amount, you can see since April 10th, the EDD has fallen behind, the numbers steadily climbing.
EDD is now paying $1.5 billion in claims a week.
Testifying before the State Assembly, EDD Director Rita Syans touted the changes made at the department, including training hundreds of new staff, expediting the call process, and efforts to combat fraud.
Seemed like a great idea, a good way to deliver benefits since not everyone has a bank account. But during the pandemic, hackers were draining money off the cards and the bank was freezing accounts. Now, EDD says it will set up direct deposit, but it won't be soon.
And to have $7,000 taken out of my account, it hurts.
You guys took $16,000 from the account. Where did it go?
I had $4,000 that was gone.
Their stories kept pouring in. Unemployed workers finding hackers draining their EDD debit cards. And when they filed a claim, Bank of America restored their funds only to take the money back out again, then freeze their accounts entirely. The bank said their claims were suspicious, but it left thousands without any income during the pandemic.
I'm the victim, and I'm being treated like the criminal.
In spite of all the turmoil, EDD renewed the B of A contract for up to 2 more years. And at a hearing Monday, state lawmakers asked EDD for a long-awaited solution.
About direct deposits. Are we going to allow direct deposits so that we avoid the debit card kind of fiasco that we've been dealing with since the pandemic?
Yes, we will, but it's probably a couple of years off.
EDD Director Rita Sines says she is asking banks for proposals to set up a direct deposit program, but it won't happen anytime soon, even though most states do offer it already.
It's a little frustrating because you see like places like Maryland or Massachusetts and Washington, these other states that are able to do the direct deposit, just, begs the question why we couldn't do that in the state of California.
While other states have direct deposit, I can guarantee you that it did not happen overnight. Contracts for direct deposit are complicated. There are all kinds of rules and federal regulations. And the other thing is that there are not a whole lot of banks out there that want to do this business.
Even Bank of America says it wants out of the current contract as soon as possible. B of A says it lost more than $200 million to fraud last year. It now faces a class action lawsuit by unemployed workers who lost their benefits to debit card fraud. Yet, B of A will still be handling the EDD debit cards at least another year.
What they have done has been to renew a contract that has made so many Californians' life miserable.
The debit cards have been connected to billions of dollars in fraud.
It's a very scary thing. It makes you want to rush out and get your payments.
I would have rather had a direct deposit.
So I'm just trying to understand the rationale from EDD to renew the contract with Bank of America.
We extended it because we didn't want to see a disruption in services.
Now, you can see how many folks want direct deposit.
I attempted to do all the appeals.
Madera County resident Bailey Graham became disabled last June after pregnancy complications. The state's disability office, known as EDD, approved her claim through December. Graham says she received regular payments for months, but come November, they stopped.
After that, I did not receive any notification, no phone calls, no emails, nothing in the mail regarding the frozen
Welcome to the Employment Development Department's Unemployment Insurance Online Assistance Center.
So KCRA3 Investigates tried to call EDD too. We called the new phone line several times today.
We're currently receiving more calls than we can answer and are unable to assist you at this time. Please try again later.
And they could not get it and could not talk to people and get it resolved. That was
it's
one big
unacceptable
wave.
that our state's doing this to us. Unacceptable.
People be pissed off because they did everything right, and then what happened was EDD screwed up, and of course they should be. You can't blame them for that.
Or having trouble putting food at the table, trying to decide whether to pay the rent or pay the groceries, or depleting their life savings, going to an extreme debt, and we're incredibly
facing the
desperate.
state's Employment Development Department.
Yeah, well, today EDD employees spoke with lawmakers about some of their struggles. KCRA3's Brian Heap has been following this story basically since the very beginning. So, Brian, what's the latest?
So, yeah, Lisa, this was part of a hearing for the Senate Labor Committee today to talk about some of the problems that EDD has been facing, well documented by us and others, but also to get an update on where things stand. And the Employment Development Department, EDD, has more than 1 million backlogged claims right now as people have applied for unemployment during the pandemic, record numbers. Today, we heard from employees of EDD who say they are working as hard as they can to process claims, but they say they're being expected to perform at an unrealistic level. The EDD is hiring thousands of new workers to help meet the demand, but current employees say they have concerns about the level of training those new hires are receiving.
Unfortunately, because the ramp up is so fast, the training is very limited to bare bones basics. Get what you need, get on the phones, start talking to clients. The training is virtual. There's very little interaction. We have grave concerns about the customer service being provided because it's not at the level at which the department traditionally provides.
We have sacrificed our holidays. We've sacrificed game nights and movie nights. We've sacrificed family dinners. But this has been going on since March. And saying people are stressed is really just an understatement. In addition to the increased workload, we face constant pressure from the media and exasperated, frustrated claimants. We are constantly being told that we're not processing claims fast enough, that we do not care, but we're expected to perform at a really unrealistic level. But we try our hardest to meet every demand.
It's one thing to be working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, but for the recipients who aren't getting their
benefits. It's hard for them to see beyond their own personal needs, and that's understandable. So I do want to thank you, but I am concerned, as everyone has articulated so far, because it seems to be almost incomprehensible that it is taking so long to go through this process. The fact that it takes years to train people appropriately says to me, as a policymaker, there's something wrong here if this system is so difficult, not only for individuals seeking the assistance must endure, but those who are providing it.
Said of the $177 billion in unemployment claims paid, $20 billion of that was fraudulent. That's about 11%. Now, after months of waiting and several postponements, the legislature held a joint session to get an update on the EDD's progress. And political reporter Morgan Reiner has the details.
When one of our government agencies fails this badly, I believe that it breaks the public's trust.
$20 billion in fraudulent claims, a 26-week waiting period. That's more than 6 months for interviews to resolve freezes. Roughly 120,000 people still waiting.
I don't think people have captured in their mind the enormity of the amount of money that has been issued errantly to undeserving people. This wasted money could have purchased 16,789 California homes.
The state auditor's office ran through the list of the recommendations they've already made.
So we recommended they create a fraud unit.
The EDD did create a fraud unit, but it is still working on hiring staffers. The department believes they will have a staffed unit by the end of November.
How do we make sure that they follow through and actually implement the changes that are going to ensure that that this is the last time we deal with this fiasco?
State auditor does not have enforcement authority. We can't force the administration to do certain things, but certainly we can partner with the legislature to provide strong oversight, to give you the information you need to determine whether or not we need to put this in.
Employment Development Department are facing federal charges for allegedly filing hundreds of thousands of dollars in fraudulent unemployment claims.
As News 8's David Gonfredson reports, one of the women facing charges lives here in San Diego.
Hi, my name's David Gottfredson. I work at Channel 8 News here in San Diego. This is the condo where Naika Gomez lives in Black Mountain Ranch, according to public records. The neighbors also confirm she lives here. I'm trying to get a hold of Naika, is that you? But when News 8 knocked on her door, she said it wasn't her.
No, you have the wrong door.
Well, this is about the EDD fraud. The 40-year-old is accused of filing multiple fraudulent unemployment claims under the names of California prison inmates. Prosecutors say this is her, showing up at ATM machines to withdraw the EDD unemployment cash. She's currently out on bail pending a criminal trial. According to the complaint filed in San Diego federal court, Gomez was in cahoots with her boyfriend, who is currently serving 94 years to life in prison for murder. Gomez is also a former employee of EDD, where, according to San Diego prosecutors, she used her training and expertise to defraud that very program in a scheme designed to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in stolen benefits.
This is taxpayer money that has been provided to help our fellow citizens in a time of real need.
Up in Sacramento, outgoing U.S. Attorney McGregor Scott filed similar EDD fraud charges against Andrea Gervais, also known as Andrea Dangerfield, who prosecutors say is a former employee of EDD as well. The 44-year-old is accused of using her home address to apply for at least 100 unemployment claims totaling more than $200,000. One of the identities she's accused of stealing is U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein.
EDD estimates their total fraud to be up to $30
claims
billion.
waiting to be certified with California's Employment Development Department. One of them belonging to a man in Sacramento County who wishes not to be identified.
And I just don't know what to do no more. You know, like, I don't understand how they're able to do this.
The Sacramento County man works in the construction industry. During the pandemic, he says the need for work has slowed down. Right now, he's in between jobs. He's filed for unemployment like he's done before, only this time hitting a wall with EDD. They're asking him to certify all over again.
And they're not even defining what exactly is wrong with the claim. As you can see in the picture, I'm filling out the claim form exactly how I'm supposed to. And I just feel like I'm getting set up for failure.
EDD states he needs to have his forms correctly filled out by July 4th to receive payment.
I'm probably barely going to make it this month, but as far as food and everything else, that's just a day by day thing I'm going to have to face until I get word back from them.
This man, one of millions facing delays in receiving benefits in the wake of technology glitches, jammed phone lines, and billions of dollars in fraud paid out by EDD.
Those fraudulent people that are getting those checks, I don't understand how, that happened, how that worked out, or how that slipped or whatever.
Representative Josh Harder of Modesto is working to fix the problem.
Look, $30 billion has been gone out in fraud. That's unforgivable.
Harder says EDD is giving away too much money to the wrong people and not giving enough to the people who need it. Because of that, he's leading a bipartisan bill to recover the funds. According to Harder, the bill, if passed, would serve 3 essential purposes: recover funds, prevent fraud, and support victims of identity theft.
This bill is going to create a new unemployment fraud hotline. It's going to push the IRS to make sure that if anybody got a 1099-G form incorrectly and files a correction claim, that they can actually receive their full federal tax refund. And then it makes sure that the Secretary of Labor is working with the Secretary of the Treasury, that states actually have plans to assist state residents with some of these incorrect 1099-Gs that have already gone out the door.
The Modesto representative says the bill would also link unemployment data to prison records to make sure the unemployment office doesn't send billions out the door. To recoup the money already lost, he's hoping the Federal Bureau of Investigations can help.
Let's get the FBI involved. Let's make sure that we are tracking down patterns that have happened not just in California, but across all 50 states. And that so we bring to bear the full force of our national law enforcement to recover these dollars, put these criminals in jail, and protect taxpayers and these victims of identity theft.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairpersons, for organizing this very, very important hearing and permission to use the prop. I don't think people have captured in their mind the enormity of the amount of money that has been issued errantly to undeserving people. This wasted money could have purchased 16,789 California homes at the median price point paid for a California home. And it could have also paid for 4 years of schooling at a UC university, and that total of students would amount to 2,065.
I think you point out a very serious problem that is a bipartisan issue that we have all been trying to find solutions for.
What I know about fraud is that most often what we see is just on the surface, that there are layers and layers beneath that. So if someone were to come up and tell me that there's $30 billion in EDD fraud, I would increase that by 4 or 5 times because generally that's how fraud works. We only see what's on the surface. If you really dig into it and start processing it and start investigating it even further, I would say, in my estimation, just if you want to call a layman's estimation, then I would say we're probably going to creep up close to $100 billion.
It says EDD should create a master list of all frozen accounts, staff a central fraud prevention unit, and make a plan to assess the effectiveness of its fraud prevention.
What we have is an audit that has confirmed the worst suspicions that we have had about
One of our
EDD.
government agencies fails this badly. I believe that it breaks the public's trust.
$20 billion in fraudulent claims, a 26-week waiting period. That's more than 6 months for interviews to resolve freezes. Roughly 120,000 people still waiting.
I don't think people have captured in their mind the enormity of the amount of money that has been issued errantly to undeserving people. This wasted money could have purchased 16,000
789 California homes.
The state auditor's office ran through the list of the recommendations they've already made.
So we recommended they create a fraud unit.
The EDD did create a fraud unit, but it is still working on hiring staffers. The department believes they will have a staffed unit by the end of November.
How do we make sure that they follow through and actually implement the changes that are going to ensure that that this is the last time we deal with this fiasco?
State auditor does not have enforcement authority. We can't force the administration to do certain things, but certainly we can partner with the legislature to provide strong oversight, to give you the information you need to determine whether or not we need to put this
in fraud. What is your updated estimate of the fraud that was perpetrated throughout the pandemic?
Of the $177 billion that was paid out, $20 billion is estimated to be
EDD
fraudulent.
officials tell us they detected an organized criminal identity theft scam in December, where fraudsters are suspected of stealing doctors' and individuals' credentials to file bogus disability claims, prompting EDD to act, freezing 27,000 new medical provider registrations and 345,000 claims. Fresno Assemblymember Jim Patterson's now taking up the issue.
What they won't tell us is, how do we help? They're basically
EDD
telling you
has
can't
frozen
help.
345,000 claims for disability insurance. The claims are suspected of being fraudulent, but some disabled people who are completely innocent are telling KC Area 3 Investigates that they've been caught in the crossfire, if you will. EDD says that it's now working with regulators and medical provider groups to quickly verify which claims are real, which are legit, and which claims are fraud, and it's contacting everyone whose accounts were frozen.
Lori Levy with EDD joins us live now. Lori, thank you so much for joining us. Talk about the process that EDD is taking right now to figure out which claims are real and which ones are fraud.
You know, yeah, scammers are out in full force. We've all seen it on our phones, and it almost like a daily occurrence. And unfortunately, this is the result of yet another identity theft scam. And in this case, using extensive stolen information, probably very much criminal elements involved, to really emulate medical providers. They've attacked medical providers in this case, as well as individuals. And we've been closely monitoring our systems, obviously, and noted this kind of activity hitting our kind of fraud indicators. So we were able to take action pretty quickly to minimize some of the impacts. But a part of that is really trying to separate out those, those fraud cases from truly the legitimate claimants and the legitimate medical providers who'd be caught up in all this. So that's our top priority, is to make sure we do believe most of those that we have suspended are fraudulent, but we have been working with the medical provider community, getting their help to inform medical providers impacted by this that we're going to need them to go through ID.me to verify their identity. And that helps us also get to the extent of the claims that are associated with that medical provider, because medical providers do certify disabilities. And hopefully that helps us get to those legitimate claims as well.
Yeah, right, because you feel for those people who have the legitimate claims. They want to get those processed as soon as they can. So if you can, Lori, how is this similar to the insurance fraud issues that you guys have had to weather for the past couple of years?
Well, disability insurance is an insurance program, just like unemployment insurance is an insurance program. In fact, government programs are the target.
The EDD director is out. The Employment Development Department been under the gun as of late. She is resigning. Rita Sines took on the role in 2020.
It should have been done a long time ago. People should have been held accountable. And in my mind, no one has been held accountable still. It never should have been allowed to happen. How do you have that happen?
Of all the folks, all the employees at EDD, management or otherwise, do you know roughly how many have been terminated for substandard job performance since you became director?
I'd have to get some statistics on that.
Do you have a rough sense of it? Is it, single digits,
I don't.
double digits?
No, I don't. And I don't have any sense that it's an unusual amount.
I mean, we're talking 12 years in one instance with the recommendations from the auditor. They ignored that. This is going to help you and help your department, and yet you ignore it. And it didn't sit well with me. It doesn't sit well today, and it shouldn't with the citizens.
I'm here to tell you that I have made changes.
But I mean, in terms of what is allowable for you to do under either state law or the relevant contracts?
There is a balance between protections, of employees and the kinds of processes that have to be undertaken to move employees out.
Significant steps still need to be taken to address areas of risk where if EDD doesn't continue to follow through on some of the initial positive first steps is taken, then it won't fully realize the benefits for Californians that need its assistance.
When we issued the EDD reports, we said, these are the things you need to do immediately. These are things you need to have done by May of 2021, by the fall of 2021. And that allows us to hold EDD accountable as far as...
How can that be acceptable? It's not. It's not. And I just want people to know that there are many of us who find it to be unacceptable and are doing our level best to fix it.
I don't have a lot of hope.
And white-collar crime is treated with kid gloves for the most part.
You look at the 2 audits before, where they give them specific instructions on how to change it and improve their process. They failed to do that. And the only way they're going to do something is having their feet to the fire. So I think there'll be some changes, but will it be drastic changes? I don't think so. It's just business as usual, and that's unfortunate. In the end, it's costing the taxpayers money, and it's someone held accountable.
Elk Grove Democratic Assembly member Jim Cooper tells me Signs did what she could over the past year, stepping into the role to handle the state's unprecedented number of unemployment claims as a result of the pandemic. That included implementing fraud detection programs.
She did some work, but there's still so much more to do.
Cooper says Signs was often unable to answer lawmakers' questions about the backlog of claims and the extent of the fraud problems.
Even in some of the hearings we had, they'll get back to you. They didn't have the answer, the right folks in place with that. So it's a big bureaucracy in EDD.